Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on the American Academy of Sleep Medicine Foundation's 2026 Career Development Grants Overview and Lifecycle. I'm Sarah Phones, and I am the Grant Program Specialist with the AASM Foundation. Before we get started, I would like to remind everybody that your audio is muted and your video is off. So if you have any questions on the topic or for me, please place those into the Q&A section of the Zoom platform. This webinar is also being recorded and will be shared with everybody who registered. So for today's webinar, you will learn about all of our career development grant programs, get insight into our grant review process, and also gain an understanding of everybody's role throughout the post-award stage and how to maintain a successful project. So to start, I'll go over an overview of each of the grant programs under this category. So the AASM Foundation offers a wide array of different programs spread across research, community, and training initiatives. And of those, our biggest is the research grant, and that includes our 5 career development grants. These grants enable scientists across all career stages to enhance their careers in sleep and circadian research. We offer our career development grants twice a year. So our first cycle opens up in late November, coming up on the 24th this year, with applications due on January 5th and notifications sent in May. Our second cycle will open up in mid-May, and those applications will be due in late June. Grant notifications will be sent in October of 2026. And so for both of these cycles, I also have included the absolute latest date that you would need to start your project if you're selected for funding, which I will touch upon a little bit later. So our first grant I will go through is our Rising Investigator Supplement Grant. This grant is new this year, and it provides supplemental funding for investigators to mentor students, postdoctoral fellows, and clinical fellows who have encountered challenges or barriers to accessing resources and or professional growth opportunities. So the projects that are supported by this grant should be mentored sub-studies or secondary analysis of a larger parent grant that is already active. This does not support projects or work that is already supported by the parent grant, so it wouldn't count for enrolling more subjects, any overlap in the aims. This is a supplementary grant. So our goal really for this grant is to provide the supplement grant candidate, the mentee or trainee, with meaningful experience in sleep or circadian science-related research with the intent of fostering or maintaining an interest in a sleep research career, as well as developing the research capabilities of the candidate across all education and training levels. For those candidates who have more of an advanced education or more advanced training, this proposed research must support their research training to prepare them for an independent sleep research career. We offer funding of up to 20% of the parent grant with a $50,000 maximum, and the funding duration can be from 8 weeks to 3 years, but it can't exceed that duration of the parent grant. Our Focus Project Grant for junior investigators provides seed funding for mentored research projects, which help an early career investigator establish a track record of funding. This year, it offers up to $50,000 for up to 1 year. And for our first cycle of 2026, the Focus Project Grant is open to projects that focus on 4 specific topics. So we have restless leg syndrome, idiopathic hypersomnia, pediatric sleep, and diagnosis, management, and treatment of sleep apnea. We are very happy to have co-funding support from the Restless Leg Syndrome Foundation for that topic, the Hypersomnia Foundation for the idiopathic hypersomnia topic, as well as ResMed for the diagnosis, management, and treatment of sleep apnea. So we are very appreciative to have their collaboration and support. Since this Focus Project Grant for this cycle does have specific focus areas, I do want to touch a little bit more specifically on what will be eligible for funding for this program. For restless leg syndrome, we specifically are seeking projects that are focused on investigations on further identifying specific endotypes and phenotypes of Russell-Silk syndrome that relate to particular subgroups, research that is oriented toward uncovering therapeutic precision when treating specific RLS or periodic limb movement disorder populations and phenotypes, studies that spur the development of new technologies to detect, manage, and or treat RLS or PLMD, and investigations that use tele-based or remote diagnostic and management technologies and protocols. So that one is our most specific topic. For the idiopathic hypersomnia topic, it is open to projects that are related to idiopathic hypersomnia. The pediatric sleep is open to pediatric sleep, sleep disorders, and or sleep health. And then for our diagnosis and management of sleep apnea, we're aimed at addressing gaps in diagnosis, management, and treatment of OSA. These projects must advance this field of medicine and population sleep health as it relates to OSA, and priority will be given to projects that propose following outcomes for 6 months or longer. All right, and so our physician scientist training grant, this one is focused on allowing early career clinicians to establish protected time for research and build a track record of successful funding and really carve out that research aspect to their career. These are also mentored projects, and it offers up to $100,000 for up to 2 years. This is open specifically to individuals who hold an MD, DO, or an equivalent medical degree. For our Bridget Success Grant for early career investigators, this provides funding for early career researchers who are planning to resubmit a previously unfunded application for a federal career development grant. And this is really targeted at researchers who are kind of at a critical point in their career where this funding is really needed to help them stay in the sleep or circadian research field. As with the others, this is a mentored project and it provides up to $100,000. One thing I want to specifically mention is that eligible applicants will need to have applied for and plan to resubmit for the mechanisms that you see here: National Institutes of Health K01, K08, K23, K25, and K99R00, or a Veteran Affairs CDA1 or CDA2. But we do recognize that these are not the only career development grant opportunities that are available out there. So if you are intending to reapply for a grant that isn't on this list, please reach out to us to confirm that this is eligible. Applicants will need to have had this confirmation from us prior to submitting the application. And we don't want to, if for some reason the program that you're looking at is not appropriate for this mechanism, we don't want you to have to go through the whole application process just to find out that you're not eligible. So please reach out to us before you start that application. And then finally, the Bridget Success Grant for mid-career and senior investigators is our only career development grant that is not mentored, because this is specifically for established investigators who are resubmitting an application for a multi-year investigator-initiated federal grant. These include National Institutes of Health R01, Veteran Affairs Merit Review Award, or the PCORI Research Grant Dissemination and Implementation Grant. As with our prior Bridget Success Grant, please reach out if you have another one in mind that is not listed here so that we can confirm for you that it's appropriate and aligns with this grant mechanism before you start on that application. And one thing that we frequently are asked from our potential applicants is the amount of funding available for each program. So here you can see how many grants for each category have been funded over the past few cycles. And so this can kind of help you get a sense of what the funding levels may be available for 2026. One thing to note is that these programs are competitive. So we tend to receive many more applications than we receive. So they are competitive and aimed at supporting the strongest science. And if you are interested in more information and further detail about the projects we have funded, go ahead and scan this QR code, and we will have a link for this in the chat later on. This will take you to the section of our website where we have projects listed dating back as early as 2005, as well as project outcomes from many of the past completed projects that we've funded. So once you are ready to apply, how does that work? So each of our career development grants has different items that are requested for the grant application. Our Rising Investigator Supplement grant requests a research plan and goals, a mentoring and training plan, and a candidate statement from the investigator, or the supplement investigator, as well as a budget and budget justification. We also ask for a copy of the original funded parent grant that the supplement project is stemming from, unless it is funded by us, in which case we already have it. Our Focus Projects grant and Physician Scientist Training grant actually are the only ones that have matching application components. So this, of course, asks for all the project details about both you, your project, and your organization, an abstract research plan and goals, career and plan and mentoring plan, and details about your biosketch and other support page for you, your mentors, and any key personnel that are also participating in the project. We do also request letters of support from mentors and a department chair or fellowship director to ensure that you do have that protected time to do the research. And you can also provide any additional letters of support that you feel are relevant to your application. And of course, we need a project budget and justification, as well as a human subjects and or animal research protection plan. Our Bridge to Success grants have slightly different structure because they are focused around resubmitting that prior application. So in addition to the items that you saw for the Focus Projects and Physician Scientist Training grant, we also ask for a response to the review or critique and the original unfunded application, as well as the original summary statement and critiques that are provided by the funding agency. The only difference between these is that the mid-career senior program does not, of course, have that mentorship element, so it does not request a career plan or a mentoring plan. For both of these, you'll also be asked to confirm which grant you plan to resubmit to, what deadline you are aiming toward, and to confirm that you are still eligible for that program once you would have completed the Bridge grant. So since we have 5 programs, I don't want to go through each section of each one, but I do want to touch upon the items that are common across them all, where questions tend to arise. So the first thing is our authorized representative section. So the authorized representative that is signing off on your application needs to be somebody from your institution's grant administration office. The application form that you'll fill out online indicates to AASM Foundation staff as administrators which user filled out which field. And so having the representative from your institution complete that field serves as confirmation for us as staff that your institution is aware of and supportive of your application. So on the application form, we do have instructions on how to invite that representative to collaborate with you and have access to completing your application form. They will enter their name here below as a digital signature to attest to these statements, and they'll need to be logged into their account so that it shows that they completed it as opposed to you completing it. Application components as far as our principal investigators and key personnel. Only our Bridge to Success grant for mid-career and senior investigators allows for multi-principal investigators. Others require only one. If for that grant, if you are doing a multi-principal investigator, you'll also need to identify a contact principal investigator for staff to contact for any administrative reasons. We define key personnel as anyone on the project who contributes to its development in a substantive, measurable way, regardless of whether or not they are receiving any compensation. Whether somebody is designated as key personnel as opposed to a consultant is really at the principal investigator's discretion. Again, it doesn't matter if they are receiving funds, but it's really about their impact on the project. And then additionally, we also require biosketches and other support pages. When preparing the budget, make sure to note how we are defining direct costs as opposed to indirect costs. For all the projects that are offered under the career development grants, these indirect costs cannot exceed 8%. And the indirect costs, or your total funding amount, is inclusive of both the indirect and direct costs. So if you're applying for $50,000, that has to include both of them, and it can't exceed 8%. For each budget year, most of these are only 1 year, but physician scientist is 2. But for each budget year, you will be presented with a subtotal table to provide the direct and the indirect costs for that year only. You'll also have, regardless of how many years your project is, a total cost table at the very end. And so this serves as confirmation of the absolute total amount that you're requesting. So if the project's more than 1 year, the direct costs and indirect costs all need to add up from each subtotal. And the application form will do some of these calculations for you. So it'll calculate the sum of the direct and indirect for the subtotal tables, but for the total table, those you'll have to enter in. And so those amounts all need to add up and match exactly. Even if it's a very small amount, $1, 10 cents, they have to exactly match. All right, I also want to highlight some things that come up frequently throughout the application process. Make sure that you are adhering to the page limits that are identified both on the RFA and on the application form itself. We also require the current NIH templates for biosketches and other support pages. These are available online, and we'll drop links to those in the chat later on. And then make sure that you are also submitting a biosketch and other support page for principal investigators, mentors, and anyone else on the project. Those also need to, like I said, be on that template. And then for the budget, make sure, as I mentioned before, that everything is totaled correctly, all the amounts match, and make sure that your indirect costs are not exceeding 8% and that your total request is not exceeding the funding limit. And then most importantly, any unresolved errors that come from a submitted application would result in withdrawal of that application from consideration, which we absolutely do not want to do. So make sure that you get communications if there's a revision on your application that's needed or a question. All of this will come from our online grant management system where you're applying. So make sure you add the email address shown here to your safe senders list or your contact list to make sure that you are receiving all of those communications. Outcomes are a very key component of all of these grant programs. So make sure that your proposal identifies the goals and outcome measures of all this research. And then for our career development grant specifically, we do have deliverables that we ask for everyone to keep in mind. Of course, make sure you're addressing the specific aims. We ask that everybody submits an abstract for presentation at the annual SLEEP meeting, and costs for travel and registration can be included in your project budget. We ask for our investigators to publish findings in peer-reviewed journals. The Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine is one option, but it is not the only one. So there are numerous publications out there that are great options. And then make sure that you are also aligning with that career development plan for the projects that are mentored, and making sure that you are using that grant to get you where you want to be. For all the Bridge to Success grants, of course, resubmitting the revised application to that external program as well. And so to make sure that your application is as competitive as possible, we recommend reviewing the RFA, the request for applications, in detail. And if there's any questions or anything that we can help with, please reach out to us. if you're unsure of what funding opportunity to submit to, if you're unsure if you're eligible, please reach out. We don't allow submitting the same project to multiple programs. So if there's any questions or you're kind of deciding between one or two, you can scan here to schedule a meeting with me, and we can kind of talk about what you're eligible for and what might make the most sense. There are some things that we can't really do. We can't review the aims of your project or provide really like scientific feedback, but we can help with questions about the review process, any technical questions with the application, any eligibility or anything like that. So this QR code is available. You can schedule a meeting at any time. So once we have your application, it will go to our scientific peer review process. Before we get into this process, just want to mention our commitment to a fair and objective review. It's really important to us that we avoid any bias throughout our review process, and all of our reviewers are asked to adhere to a very comprehensive conflict of interest policy and a confidentiality and non-disclosure policy as well, to ensure that all applications are evaluated on their merits and all information is kept secure. The Career Development Grants Review Committee reviews all applications under this program. The mandate and roster are here for your reference. And for the 2025-2026 committee term, our chair is Dr. Jean Duffy. We also will bring on any ad hoc reviewers as needed to fill any gaps in expertise. For our grant reviews, we use the same anchor points as the NIH, a score of 1 being the strongest, most highly competitive application, all the way down to a score of 9 for a low impact, non-competitive application. This is the range with the additional guidance that we provide to all of our reviewers. The review criteria varies a bit across some of these programs. So our focus projects, physician scientist training grant, and project success for early career investigators are all evaluated on the significance, mentorship and career development, the approach, and the environment. The Rising Investigator Supplement Grant has different criteria due to the nature and structure of that grant program. So it's evaluated on the 3 items you'll see here. And then the project success for mid-career senior investigators, because those aren't mentor projects, these proposals are instead evaluated on the investigators as opposed to mentorship. The criteria that you see here are applicable to cycle 1. For cycle 2 of 2026, we are intending to update these criteria to align with the new National Institutes of Health simplified framework that has recently been released. We also have a couple additional considerations that we ask everybody to, all of our reviewers, to take into consideration. So while these aren't assigned a specific score, they are taken into account. Those would be concerns with the proposed use of human or animal subjects, appropriateness of the budget, and then how well the budget is justified. So those don't receive a numeric 1 through 9 score, but they are something that are kept in mind. As I mentioned before, the Career Development Grant Review Committee reviews all applications for this program. Reviewers are assigned to applications based on their own expertise. And on the application form, we do ask for keywords that pertain to your project. This can be the population that you're studying, the topic area of research, the type of research, whether it's clinical, basic, population. And this helps us to match your application to the best possible reviewer. Additionally, like I mentioned, we do bring on ad hoc reviewers in case there are projects where we feel we need to bring in some additional expertise. So make sure that those keywords are really describing your project, the research type, the topic area, any specific populations, or anything that will help us best match to the most appropriate reviewer. Once our reviewers have completed their initial reviews, our committee chair and vice chair will use the overall scores that are assigned and critiques to determine which applications will be triaged. There's kind of 2 sides to our triage process. So those applications that are scored very, very favorably will not be fully discussed, as those tend to move directly to the funding recommendation stage. And additionally, Anything that receives a very low impact score is also not discussed due to the low likelihood of it being appropriate for funding. And so this allows our study sections to prioritize discussing the applications that are in the medium to high impact range. So once the peer review process is complete, we move on to making our final funding decisions. So the funding process begins with our Career Development Grants Review Committee submitting their final scores. After the review meeting, they will submit final critiques as well. And then our review committee chair will develop summary statements for all the applications that were discussed at the meeting. The AASM Foundation Executive Committee will review these final scores and submit funding recommendations to our full board of directors. If the executive committee identifies an application that has weaknesses that they feel can be easily addressed, they also have the option to invite applications to go through a rapid revise and resubmit process, where they would invite that applicant to update components of their application for additional consideration. The final step is our board of directors voting on their final funding decisions. Once all of these steps have been completed, notifications go out to all applicants, regardless of the outcome. And as part of that notification, we will provide the summary statement if your application was discussed by the full committee. And everyone will receive the review critiques forms that go with theirs. So you will always receive that feedback regardless of what the outcome was. If you are selected for funding, then AASM Foundation staff will work with you and your institution to get things started on your project. Typically, we will work with your institution administrator to get more logistical things like payment details and negotiating any terms of the grant contract. And then as the principal investigator, at that point, you'll be working on getting IRB or IACUC approval for your project or an exemption. And you can provide that to us and your administrator as well. And then we also ask for a grant recipient profile form with some basic information about you and your project so that we can share details of who we are funding. In order to have your grant contract fully executed and to start your project, we require all the items listed here. And your project cannot start and funds will not be released until we have a fully executed grant contract in place. We allow up to 9 months from the date of the notification to fully execute your grant contract and start your project. But if you are ready sooner, we can start sooner. So the start date of your project really depends on when you receive your IRB, when you are ready to get started. If you exceed that date that is identified in your notification letter without having the grant contract, we can revoke the award. So it's really important to make sure that you work with your grant administrator to get all this documentation in, and also just stay in touch with us. Let us know if there's any delays or anything that is unexpected that's coming up, so that we can work with you. We do require progress reports at regular intervals throughout your grant. For projects that are up to 12 months, we require a progress report every 6 months. And then for those that are 2 years, we require progress reports annually. And then the final report is due 90 days after the end of that project period. All reports are submitted online through our grant management system. So same system that you're using to apply, you'll be using to submit all of your reporting, as well as any requests that are related to the grant. If there's a no-cost extension request, a change in your budget, a change in your key personnel, all of that will take place in our online system. So we, ask that you please complete all of your reporting on time and work with your post-award grant administrator to make sure that all the components as far as the expense report and anything that might come from their side specifically, that everything is in on time. Once your final report is submitted and approved, we'll close out your grant. So we'll either issue the remainder of funds, or a refund will come back to your institution for anything that has not been used. And then as part of our final report, we ask that all principal investigators provide key project outcomes. These are in more basic lay language on your final report that we can share publicly on our website, along with links to any journal articles or media that you may have received as part of your project, so that we can share publicly, share your successes, share the advancements that you've made. And these are made available to the public. These are publicly on our website. So that is an important part of our final report. So in the event that you are not funded, there are a couple options. We do offer a formal resubmission mechanism for our Focus Project Grant, Physician Scientist Training Grant, and the Rising Investigator Supplement Grant. This allows the applicant to provide a formal response to the prior review critiques and submit a revised application for another consideration. So this is available as a single resubmission, and it needs to be submitted within 12 months of the original application notification. You would still have to meet all the eligibility criteria, and you have to submit to the same grant program. So if you apply originally for the Physician Scientist Training Grant and you are not funded, you wouldn't be able to submit to the Focus Projects Grant as a resubmission. You could submit it as a new application, but it wouldn't be able to go through the formal process where you would be able to respond to those critiques and outline how you've addressed them. The other thing that I'll mention is that as much as we would love to be able to fund everyone, there may be other organizations that are a better match for your project. So we do have several external funding resources on our website that you can consider, and this QR code will take you to those, and those are other options to consider as well. We offer frequently asked questions on our website that you can reference throughout the entire life cycle of your grant, in case there's anything that comes up throughout the application process, throughout the post-award active grant stage. This is available, but AASM Foundation staff is also always available for you to contact, and anything that you need, we are here to support you. And with that, I will open things up to questions. Like I mentioned, please always reach out to us if there's anything that we can help with or any questions that you have. This is the QR code to schedule a meeting with me if you want to discuss your questions in more detail, if they're more specific to you. We're always happy to meet and connect and talk through any questions that you have. Please reach out at foundation@aasm.org, or you can call, and that's my direct number. But I do have a little bit of time for questions, and it looks like there are a couple in the Q&A. So let me see what we have. Okay, so our first question is the general category for the Focus Projects Grant for junior investigators still being offered? This is not being offered for this cycle. In the past, we've had an RFA that encompasses all sleep research topics. This year, we are not offering that RFA, and we are only focusing on those 4 topics that were outlined previously, because our board of directors would like to prioritize the research that we are funding in those specific areas this year. But there are alternative funding opportunities, not just through other organizations, but through us as well. So if your topic that you are working on does not align this year for the Focus Projects Grant, we encourage you to look at the other programs that we offer. 1 second. I lost my screen share. But we do encourage you to, 1 second, let me get my screen share back up. You can look at many of the other programs that we have. The Strategic Research Grant is a great one. This one is open typically to specific projects, but it offers a much wider range of funding and it has broader eligibility. So it goes from 50,000 up to 100 or up to 250,000. So that may be a good fit for you as well. Or there's other career development grant opportunities also. Let me see what else. Okay, so next question that I have is, do applications require addressing the NIH data sharing policy? We do not specifically require that for these programs at the moment. Okay. Okay, let me look and see. Okay, so the next question is, if I applied for a K-99 and it was not funded, would I be eligible to apply for the Bridge Success Grant if I plan to resubmit to a K-23? And the answer is yes, this is allowable. You can, as long as you are within the same agency, you can do a different mechanism. So the K-99 to the K-23 would be allowable. We would ask for you to provide rationale as to why, like as to why the change. Um, but this is allowable. You wouldn't be able to change agencies. So if you apply for a K-99, you wouldn't be able to then go to like a VA, CVA. But within the same agency, this is acceptable. Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, our next question is, will I receive reviewers' comments as feedback? Yes, so we will always provide the reviewer critique forms along with your notification, regardless of what your funding outcome is. And if your application is discussed, we'll also provide the summary statement as well. So everyone will receive all of that, all of those comments regardless. Okay. Um, all right, so our next question is, are there any salary or percent effort caps requested as part of the application? The good news is no, we do not have any salary caps. So I know that's always welcome news, but nothing specific outlined for any percent effort or salary. Okay, so our next question, this is a good one too. So the question is, what if the NIH funds my application after the ASM awards its grant? Is the ASM grant terminated and funds returned to the ASM? So this is, it kind of depends. So we ask that you notify us right away if you receive funding after the ASM provides an award to you. And you can request to retain your grant. Um, there would there can't be any scientific or budgetary overlap. Um, and so that'll be a request process that goes through our leadership to determine that there is no overlap. And typically for things like, if the NIH funds your application, um, we typically can't retain your grant if it's staying primarily for something like salary support or like any indirect costs. So it depends really on the nature of what the situation is. If it's before your contract is executed, a lot of times people will just go with the NIH one. So it really depends on the situation. But please notify us right away if this is something that comes up so that we can work with you in your specific situation. All right. All right. Okay, our next question reads, for the mid-career bridge funding, is it correct that the application must include a new proposed study that will address reviewer concerns? Is there a preference on how much of the funds are spent on faculty support for their time versus the project itself? This is a really good question. So we do ask that the proposed study for the bridge funding does address the reviewer concerns that came up in the original unfunded application. So if they are asking for, like this mentions, more preliminary data or an explanation on why a population is not included, anything like that, our reviewers are looking for how well those critiques are addressed. And then as far as how much of the funds are spent on faculty support for their time versus the project itself, there isn't, like I mentioned, there isn't like a percent effort cap or salary cap, but they will be looking for support for the project as opposed to a majority of it going just to faculty support. So for those ones, it is a little bit trickier. If there's something that's in a little bit more detail, I would encourage reaching out to us directly so that we can make sure that what you have in mind is eligible. But typically, they are looking for more project itself support. Okay. All right. Our next question is, do you need a specific NIH score to apply for the Bridge Success Grant? The answer is no. If you have received, like if your application was discussed at study section, we asked for the summary statements, but if it wasn't, there's no cutoff score for where you could apply. We just would ask for any critiques or feedbacks that were from the original application. So, but there isn't like a threshold that you have to meet. Okay. Are we allowed to submit multiple applications for the same grant cycle? The answer is yes, but with the caveat that you can't submit the same application to multiple programs. So you couldn't submit to physician scientist training grant and then also to success with the exact same project. You can submit to two of them if there's no overlap, whether it's scientific or budgetary. And then in the event that both are fantastic and fall within our funding range, you would have to pick which one you would want to be funded. So we can only fund one per person per cycle. All right. And then the last question that I see is, are you able to provide examples of grant applications that have been funded by the ASM in the past? And the answer to that is yes. So we have, and I can pull that up for you, we do have quite a bit of project outcomes and project recipients on our website that are available. And let me hold on. All right. This QR code will take you directly to our grant and recipient award page. This outlines recipients by year, and then you'll also be able to access those project results that I showed. So this will give you a good sense of what has been funded in the past, who the recipients are, what their project was about. They're outlined there by year, going all the way back to 2005. So there are quite a lot of examples. Yeah. So this QR code will take you right there. All right. Okay, and it looks like those are all the questions that we have for right now. We just have a couple minutes left. So like I mentioned before, if you have anything that's more specific to you that you want to discuss in more depth, absolutely, I know things can be like very, career stage specific or anything like that. So in those instances, please reach out to us, send an email, you can schedule a meeting, and we're always available to be able to talk through any questions, and make sure that you have a good sense of what might work for you. So if there are no other questions, we will let everybody go for the afternoon. Thank you so much for being here, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.